Hey everyone, it's Mike from Rogala Photography here. Today I want to do something a little different. Yes, we're going to talk about photography gear, but I know as beginners, I know that we always kind of like what do we buy? Like you got to buy a camera and a lens. That's a given, okay? But like what else do you really need? Okay? So what I want to do is I want to rank different types of gear. Now, we're not going to rank brand or models or anything like that at all. We're going to talk more about categories. Okay, for instance, like, bags, tripods, etc. Okay, and we're going to rank them all the way from must buy down to don't waste your money, don't buy. Okay, and then we're going to have different rankings in between, and you'll see when I put my screen up in a minute. So, what I want to do is help out the beginners uh, when you are. I mean, obviously, your budgets are small, and you know what, you really just want to spend your money wisely, especially when you're a beginner, because who knows, you may decide that photography isn't for you. So you want to make sure that you definitely spend your money wisely. Now, a couple of caveats. I've already mentioned one. I am assuming you already have a camera and at least one lens, whether it's a kit lens, a high quality lens, I don't care. You already have a camera and a lens. Okay. Also, I am assuming you are definitely a beginner. All right. Now, intermediates, this might be a good refresher as well. There might be a couple things on this list that you don't know. So, it'll definitely help you out though. What else? There was one more caveat I was going to talk about here. If I think about it, I'll get to it. But basically, um, you already own a camera and lens, so we're not going to talk about that, and we're definitely not talking about brands or whatever. Now, I may make a few suggestions, a couple different brands, because here's the deal: when buying gear, when we're beginners, we kind of think, well, I don't know if I'm going to like photography or not, so I'm not going to spend a lot of money. So I'm going to buy cheaper gear and I'll buy more expensive later. Nine chances out of 10, that's going to be just a waste of money. All right. There's an old saying, buy once, cry once. Buy decent. You don't have to buy the top of the line. Like if you're talking about a tripod, I don't expect any beginner to buy a Gitzo $1,000 tripod. All right, I don't do that. But don't buy the $50 Amazon Basic Special, just because it's cheap either. Find something in the middle, do some research, and go from there. But make sure that you get something decent. Otherwise, you're not going to enjoy it. If you buy a cheap tripod or a cheap camera bag, you're not going to enjoy the experience of photography. And you know what? You probably are going to quit because using your gear is part of the photography experience, and it helps the experience be good. Now, you don't have to have the latest and greatest, just get good quality gear. That's it. Not up here, not down here, somewhere in the middle. Okay. All right. Oop, let me come over here. All right, that's good right there. All right, over here you see I have my chart. At the top, we have must buy. These are things that I think you absolutely need to get. Should buy is the next one. Now, you don't necessarily have to buy it right away, but I suggest that it's something you have in your kit because you're probably going to need it. Oh, one other thing though, the other thing that's going to determine whether or not you should buy something or not is the niche of photography you are in. Portrait photography and wedding photographers might need certain equipment that landscape photographers probably won't need or don't really need. Okay. So some of these things I will talk about that to kind of get you in the right ballpark. Okay. So we have must buy, should buy. Then we have buy later, meaning that you don't really need it right away, but up the road, you're probably going to really want it or you're going to need it, one or the other. Maybe by someday, this is something that maybe put it on your bucket list, but as a photographer, you probably don't need it. And then also I have do not buy on the bottom. Okay. So that means that don't waste your money. You're probably not going to need it. And again, it might depend on the niche you get into, but you really don't need it. So we're going to go with that. Again, this is as a photographer. As a videographer, some of these things you may need where a photographer won't, but we are talking about photography here. Okay. All right. The first one we have let's go with a camera bag. Okay. Now I'm going to put this all the way up here at must buy. All right. You need a place to put your gear. You need a way to carry your gear out to wherever you're going, whether you're a portrait photographer, wedding photographer, whatever, landscape. You need to be able to carry your gear around with you. So you're going to need a bag. Now, whether or not you get a backpack, a sling, a messenger bag, that all depends. Okay. The next one I'm gonna talk about. We're gonna debate this too here, but it's kind of related to this first one. So a camera bag. Now, good brands to get: Shimoda, PGY Tech. Let me see what's some other ones here that I like. Think Tank is a good one. Nomad. I used to nominate or recommend Peak Design. I think they're getting too trendy and a little too big for their britches right now. So I'm not gonna. I mean, they make good bags. Don't get me wrong; they're good quality, but I'm not gonna recommend them here. Okay, but Shimoda, Nomadic, Think Tank, even Low Pro. Low Pro makes some pretty decent bags, especially for a beginner. That's definitely a good place for you to start because the bags really aren't that high a price. Shimoda bags can go $300-400. Low Pros, you're talking around 200, 250 for a decent bag, and they're good quality. So I mean, I somewhere in that lines, okay. But you want to get a good quality. Now, related to the camera bag is a case. Now, I'm going to put this with the camera bag here. And the reason is because whether or not you get a bag or a case is going to depend on what niche you are in. If you are a wedding photographer, a portrait photographer, let me see what else. Maybe a product photographer on location. Did I say wedding? Maybe a wedding photographer. Um, you probably should have a case. It's a little more professional looking, but also too, it's much easier to find what you're looking for in a case, the way it's set up and organized. A bag, you got all these pockets and you might have a lot of stuff in little pouches and stuff. So you're trying to find stuff might take you a little longer. But if you're like a landscape photographer where, being in a hurry isn't necessarily, I mean, for some things it is, but you can get away with a backpack. Plus, most likely for a landscape photographer, you're going to be hiking into different locations that are a little harder to kind of bring a case. So, again, if you're a landscape photographer, you probably want a backpack. If you are a street photographer, maybe a messenger bag or a sling would be better fit for that type of environment. So a bag or a case, a must buy, must buy. Next one. A tripod. Now I almost put this on should buy instead of must buy. I think for most niches, you're going to need some sort of tripod. Now, the type of tripod, that's a different story. That can change. But you're going to need some sort of, whether a tripod, a monopod, something to stabilize your camera. Wedding photographer, maybe, because you might have a second camera set up, a B cam. You may be recording video while you're doing photographs. Portraits, you might, you know, if you're a school photographer doing portraits, you're going to have to be set up on a tripod. You're not going to be handheld. If you're a portrait photographer on location, you might be handheld. Wedding photographer, again, it all depends. You're going to be handheld, but you may have a second camera if you don't have a second shooter. So you're going to have a second camera set up on a tripod. Product photography, you're definitely going to need a tripod. Um, Again, landscape photography, you're going to need one. Street photography, maybe a monopod, but you're probably going to not need that. A journalist, a photographer, you know, you're probably not going to need a tripod. So again, it's going to depend on the niche. You know what I'm going to do actually? I'm going to move this. I'm going to put it down with should buy. Because you know what, as I'm going over that, I'm kind of thinking, you know what, there are a couple niches where you're really not going to need a tripod. So again, now you are a beginner, so you may not know what niche you really want to get into yet. So having one, you know, it's probably better than not having one. But again, no need to get a Gitzo $1,000 tripod, but stay away from those $50 Amazon basics. Leaf Photo, Benro, Sure, even three-legged things, they all make excellent, excellent tripods. So a tripod is a should buy. The next thing on my list, a camera multi-tool. I think almost every niche you will need some sort of camera multi-tool. Now the one I have here is a small rig one, so it's a tiny one. They have all different ones. This one's like $19 regular price. Catch them on sale for like $14. They're definitely nice. I have two of them. I have one for different bags, one for my studio, one for my bag. And I want to get a couple other ones as well, just to kind of keep them all over the place. But definitely, you're going to need a multi-tool that's geared towards photography. Yeah, you could buy one at Harbor Freight or, you know, at Home Depot or whatever, but you're going to be missing. There's certain sizes that you may not be able to get at a hardware store. So you're going to want a camera specific a multi-tool. You know, having a generic multi-tool from a hardware store with like pliers and scissors, that's great too. You definitely should have one of those as well. But this one right here is a must buy. A rocket blower. I'm putting that as a must buy. It is imperative that you keep the glass on your lens clean and free from dust. I'm also going to include a microfiber cloth, which I didn't put on my list here, but a microfiber cloth will go with that as well. But also too, you're going to need to blow out your sensor. So when you change your lenses, if you're like on a sandy or dirty area where wind's blowing, you might get some dirt blowing inside your sensor cavity there. So you're going to take a rocket blower and blow that out to get all that dust out of there or whatever you have in there. Now it doesn't take the place of a good sensor cleaning. And as a beginner, I suggest you don't do that yourself. I mean, even when I get one sensor cleaning done, I prefer to have a professional do it. Um, yeah, I'll pay a little bit of money to have that done. It's just well worth it because they'll go over to your camera and they'll check it for other issues as well. But definitely a rocket blower, and also I'll put a microfiber cloth on that list. An L bracket, okay? For a lot of photography, you're going to need to be able to do horizontal landscape or vertical, okay? Especially nowadays, especially if you're doing vertical video or even vertical shots for your social media accounts. You got to turn it around. And if you're going to be using a tripod, you're going to need an L bracket, so you can very easily just turn it in put it in. They have Arca Swifts on both sides. You can get one specially made for your camera, for your model, or you could buy like a generic one. I suggest getting one that's made for your camera. It's just going to be a better fit. And you can this way it's easy. It's just real quick, boom, 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 and switch it around really, really fast. So an L bracket. Now eventually you may want to upgrade to a cage, which is what I use. Cages are great because if you shoot video, you're going to have to want to put other attachments on there. They have different attachment points. So definitely an L bracket. and then like a cage. I don't even have a cage on my list right now because I think that's more specialized. But an L bracket, I think it's definitely a should buy. Studio lighting. I'm putting this on maybe by someday. All right. Again, this is going to depend on the niche you are in. If you are in product photography, portrait photography, headshots, you're going to need some studio lights. Now, this is different than a flash. We're going to talk about flashes later. But studio lights are definitely going to depend on niche. Definitely, it's going to be a buy later unless you are doing portrait. Now, if you're doing portraits and you do a natural light, which most people, I think, when you start portrait photography, you're on location and you're using natural light. That's a great way to start. Then you need to learn how to use your light. And I do suggest you learn with studio type lights or small panel lights before you try to go learn a flash. Flash, it takes a little bit more tweaking and a little bit more into your camera settings, where studio lights, you just treat it like the sun. All right. You need knowing where to put the lights, that's a different story. But setting your exposure, you're setting it the same way you would set it for the sun. So if you can do natural lighting, then you're going to be just fine using studio lights. But again, it's one of those buy later. Now, maybe you could buy a couple small panel lights that you can carry around in your bag. That way you can use them as extra lights if you are on location to kind of fill in the shadows a little bit, or maybe put some highlights if you're doing some macro photography. You're probably going to need some small lights if you're going to be doing like macro photography and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, it's one of those learn your camera, learn your niche first, then get the lights later. Okay, so studio lights. A flash. Now, if you notice, I put this ahead of the studio light. This is a buy later, okay, because it's definitely something that I don't think a beginner trying to start to learn flash photography. Again, it does take it can be a little on the confusing side because you're adding an extra element to the exposure triangle. And the exposure triangle is shutter, aperture, and ISO. Now you're adding your flash. And it can be a little confusing for a beginner to do. Once you learn it, it's easy to figure out. But you may also want to get a light meter and learn how to use a light meter as well. You don't have to have one. You can do trial and error. But if you're like on a timed photo shoot, where time is of the essence, you're probably going to want the light meter along with your flash so you can quickly get what settings to get. And then if you need to adjust slightly, you'll be able to adjust. But also too, if you're going to get a flash, you also should get a trigger so you can do off-camera flash, because having that flash right on the camera, yes, that style of photography is trending right now, but for most professional photography, you want an off-camera flash or even multiple flashes. So you're going to need a trigger to trigger those off. Okay, so using a flash. Now, a flash you're going to use maybe for portrait, headshots, wedding photography, product photography. Personally, for product photography, I prefer using like a studio light or, again, panel lights. I just think it's easier to actually see what you're doing. But a lot of professionals do use flash, and there are purposes for using flash for that type of photography. So a flash is a buy later. A gimbal. Don't waste your money. I have one. Mine's a DJI RS2 Pro. I like it. It's awesome. It's cool. But for photography, you definitely don't need it. It's definitely a videographer's tool. But I tell you, I'm trying to balance a professional type of a gimbal. Man, I tell you, that's such a pain in the butt. And if you change from vertical or horizontal landscape to vertical, then you got to rebalance it. Then when you take it out of your bag, you got to make adjustments. Yes, the newer ones are definitely better than like my RS2. But man, just you know what? Don't waste your money on a gimbal. All right. So you'll see a lot of photographers buy them because they're doing a wedding photographer and they also do videography. Don't waste your money on a gimbal. Extra camera batteries, a must buy. I have, I think, what do I have? I have four just for my Canon R5 Mark II. And then I have six that I had bought over the years for my regular Canon R5. Okay. Definitely need extra camera batteries. One of these, especially if you're on Canon, if you're using like an older DSLR, or if you're using like a Canon R1 or I think the R3, they got the bigger battery. You could probably get away with two batteries because they're bigger batteries. But if you're using like an R5, an R6, R7, those batteries are much smaller. And again, you as a landscape photographer, it might last you the day. Most likely you're going to go for a bare minimum two, but you want to have a bunch of extras, and then you're going to need chargers for them. So I suggest getting a multi-charger where you can charge them all at once, but definitely multiple batteries. Now what you could do, which is what I've been doing a lot lately, use a V-mount battery, or with the invention of these camera battery banks, or these battery banks, a lot of cameras you can plug them into a battery bank and they'll last forever. Plus, it'll also, if you're using a monitor, lighting, a recorder to record audio, whatever, the battery banks can do. They'll keep all those charged. So you can definitely use a V-mount battery or a battery bank, but definitely you need some extra batteries, multiple battery sources, whatever kind you use, get multiple ones. Now, if you're in the studio, you can also get a dummy battery that can plug into a battery bank or um, a V-mount battery, or you can even plug it into the wall for that matter, and it'll keep your camera charged. However, that will only work for your camera, and it won't charge um, other devices. So just keep that in mind. Batteries. A drone. Again, they're cool. I have the DJI Air 2S. I love it. I pull it out every now and then when I just want to do something different. But I tell you, it's a pain. People can get very opinionated about them, about whether or not they are ethical or not. Listen, 99% of drone users are some of the most ethical people out there. They're not trying to spy in your house or your backyard or do anything illegal with them. They just want to get some cool aerial photos and video. That's it. Okay. Plus, also with the new laws, kind of banning DJI and Autel because they are Japanese or Chinese companies and supposedly involved with the Chinese government. Again, I'm not going to get into a debate about that, but right now I think owning a drone is more of a pain than it's worth. Plus, it takes up extra space in your camera bag as well. That 99% of the time, you're never even going to use it. If you're a landscape photographer, you might use it. If you're a street photographer, most likely not, because you're not going to be able to use it in a city. If you are a wedding photographer, maybe that is a popular thing to use for video and photos as well. So maybe if you are, but for the most part, stay away from the drone. Okay, stay away from it. Camera filters. I put this under a buy later because I think you're definitely going to need them depending on your niche. Landscape photographers, if you do any type of videography as well, you're definitely going to need ND filters and polarizers. Definitely. Okay. So you're going to need at least those. But otherwise, as a beginner, I would just stay away from that for now, from filters, and buy them a little bit later. Again, once you get the exposure triangle under your belt and even composition. If you're working on your composition, okay, maybe get a couple ND filters and a polarizer filter. It could definitely help you out. But for the most part, it's a must buy. You definitely buy it, but wait a little bit until you get a little bit better with your skills. So, and then you definitely use them. And again, niche. Street photographers definitely going to probably need a polarizer to help with reflections on cars and windows. Again, landscape photographers, wedding photographers. You might, if you do a lot of outdoor weddings, you're probably going to need them as well. You need some ND filters or polarizers to help, definitely help with that. If you're a portrait photographer or even a product photography where you deal with some sort of reflections, you may need a polarizer and or even an ND. Most likely a product photographer won't need an ND, but you'll probably definitely need a polarizer to help with reflections a little bit. So again, filters, it just depends on your niche. So they are a buy later. A microphone. Again, mostly if you are going to be shooting video. If you are a wedding photographer that does um, video, might need it. If you are a street or journalist photographer and you shoot the occasional video to kind of add to your photographs to kind of talk about the story going on, you're probably going to need a microphone. So it's one of those maybe buy later, but don't worry about it now. Just, get it later. Okay. SSDs or storage. I'm also going to put compact flash type A or B, depending on your camera, SD cards, SD hard drives, etc. You're going to need them to store all those photos. Don't leave them on your computer. Number one, it's going to clog up your computer and take up all your space. And if you're like most people, you always buy the bare minimum computer, which you should never do. I should probably talk about. I actually should do a video about buying a computer for the photographer and videographer. I think I'll do that someday. But you're going to need to store your photos, especially if you're a professional. And if you're a professional, you're going to want multiple storage places and you're going to want something called a NAS, which there are a ton of videos out there. I'm not going to really get into that, but you want to be able to store all of your photos on large hard drives that are protected. Because again, you never know if a client's going to call you back 2 years from now and say, hey, can we get some copies of such and such of photos that you took 2 years ago? You're going to want them all saved and in a safe place. But also, too, editing off of an external drive, for a lot of people, it could be faster, but also you don't want to clog up all that storage, like I said, on your laptop or your computer. So you keep all your photos on the SSD, and then you can edit right off of them in Lightroom or Photoshop or whatever, and then save the finished ones maybe to the cloud. It's what I do. I save them to my iCloud drive. So when I'm on my phone and I want to post to social media, I just go boom in the Photos app. I got the photo there, and then I just put it on the social media and it's right there. So definitely need storage for your photos and or video. A remote trigger so you don't have to touch your camera when hitting the shutter button. I put this as a buy later. If you are a landscape photographer, definitely going to need it. You can get a wired one or you can get a wireless one. I have a wired one in my drawer. I always keep that as a backup, but I like to use a wireless one. And the reason I like a wireless one, because let's just say you are a wedding photographer and you're a single photographer, not single as in not dating, but a single as in you only work by yourself, no B cam at all, no second photographer. Um, and you got your camera set up on a tripod somewhere to get a different angle, or maybe that one has a zoom lens or a wide angle, and you got your hand holding the other one. You can use this remote wirelessly to take photos from the other side of the room while you're taking handheld photos with your camera. So wireless is great. Now you got to keep in mind now, wireless, something could go wrong. The signal interference, if you have a lot of cell phones going on, that could possibly set them off. Usually they're a little bit better now, where you're not going to have as much problems with interference, but you could. If you're in a large event, like at a concert, maybe you're a concert photographer, and that you definitely could probably run into some interference there because you have a lot of cell phones all in one area. So you may not want to be wireless or something like that. But wireless or wired. Wired is definitely a good backup because chances are it's not going to die. Okay, it's going to work no matter what. There is always a chance that the wire can fail or the connection can fail. There's always that possibility, but have multiple ones. So having a trigger to trigger, excuse me, to trigger your um, camera, remote camera, a camera strap, or a harness or a quick connect. I'm putting them on kind of all together. There are going to be times where you got your camera with you, but you're not going to be taking photos and you just don't want to hold it in your hand. Maybe you're eating something, you're at a wedding and you're eating. You don't want to set it down. I mean, you know what? You hope that at a wedding something's not going to get stolen. But hey, you never know. You may leave it, forget it, go throw your trash out, and then you come back and the camera's gone. Again, you don't want to be setting it down just anywhere. You want to just be able to hang it, clip it to your backpack if you have a quick connect, a harness so you can have multiple cameras. A wedding photographer definitely should have a harness, especially if you are a shooter where you don't have a second shooter. Definitely should do that. An event photographer, street photographer, definitely use some sort of harness or like a quick connect where you can switch your cameras around and you don't have to carry your bag with you. You can keep batteries in your pockets, whatever, something small. Filters you can keep in your pockets, and all you got to carry is the harness or the strap, and that's it. So definitely you should buy some sort of camera strap or some way of carrying your camera when you need your hands for other things. Okay, so just keep that in mind when you are shopping. Okay, and a lot of these things are not that expensive, and you can ask somebody to buy them for you for Christmas as a stocking stuffer. Camera straps, you can get a decent camera strap for a decent price. Um, Camera batteries, they're about 70, $80. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, don't buy the third party in camera. Don't waste your money on those. Stick with the brand that your camera is made from. I know there's going to be people that are going to fight me on that, but spend the extra money, buy once, cry once. Spend the extra money on brand name batteries made for your camera. Okay, buy the camera manufacturer. They've been tested. 100% they're going to work and they're going to be backed up by the company. But, a rocket blower, ask for that. Ask somebody to buy you something like that for Christmas. The multi tool. What else? Oh, I don't know. A camera case. Actually, the camera case I use, I got mine from Harbor Freight. It's their, oh, I forgot the name of it. Oh, I know. I'll post it down here in the description here. I was actually it's the 5800. I can't remember the actual name from it, but it's a replica of the Pelican case, the 1535, I believe. Or no, the Pelican Air 1535. That thing is like $300, $200, and that's without any inserts. This one comes with the foam, the pluck foam, But you can buy third-party camera inserts that'll fit right in it that are made for the Pelican 1535, and it'll fit right into the Harbor Freight one. And they only cost you catch them on sale for what I think $60, $70 sometimes. That's great. Okay, and again, that's what I use. It's a nice wheeled one, and I have a handheld one that I carry around. I got that one for I think $25, $30, and that one's the 4800. So again, you don't have to buy the big name brand, but do your research and have somebody, again, for a Christmas gift or a birthday gift. Some of these cheaper items, they can buy it for you, and then you can save up for some of the more expensive items to add to your list later on. Okay? So, I hope you found this video helpful. And I hope you can use this video. And beginners, I hope you stick with photography. I know it's scary, it's expensive, there's so much to learn. You got a lot of trolls on social media that are just telling you and they're giving you bad advice and they're trying to tell you to buy this gear, buy that gear, blah 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 blah. Narrow it down. This will narrow down what you need, and most of the stuff that you need isn't really that expensive. Okay, yes, you want it because you want to save up for lenses, and then eventually you want to get yourself a better body, a camera body. When I got into digital photography, I started off with my phone with camera apps. But then my first DSLR was the Canon T7 9. Okay, I was shooting film back in the 90s. I was using a Nikon EM you couldn't even adjust the aperture, I think, or what, I can't remember what it was. But oh no, not the aperture, the shutter speed, I think. You couldn't even adjust it. So it was just a 2 point camera, and I tell you, it was hard to learn on film. But you definitely learn a lot when shooting on film. But T7i was a great starter camera, and I thought I took some excellent cameras, and I had some professional photographers really giving me compliments on what I was taking. They thought I was using something higher end. Then I moved up to the EOS R. Again, not necessarily a high end camera, especially at today's prices, but I bought it when I was only a year or two old. And you get it, that was a full frame camera because I really wanted to get into full frame. And it took really good photos. Then eventually I moved up to the R5, and now I got the R5 Mark II. So again, it's a process. A beginner is not going to start with an R5 Mark II. Yes, if you don't like photography and you get out of it, it'll be easy to sell it. You can definitely get a lot of your money back from it. I would start a little bit lower, maybe like with an R8 or some of the other cameras from the other brands, whatever. But me, I'm a Canon shooter, so uh, definitely start. You can start off with a little bit lower. They're going to take excellent photos. You don't need the most expensive or the latest and greatest. Okay, but buy the gear you need first, and then add onto your kit. So please click that like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And until next time, have a very, very blessed day and take care, everyone.